You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Josh Toomey. So Josh, what do you do professionally?
Professionally, I deliver mail, so
You're a mail carrier.
I am.
Dude, this is something I'm actually pretty interested in. So what time do you get up to do this?
I mean, not too bad, like 6, a little bit after 6.
That's crazy because there's this woman I podcasted with that got me really interested. I'm up at odd hours of the night. Mostly I'm an insomniac, so a good hour's sleep every 3 days is just all I need.
Oof.
And yeah, it's rough. But the whole concept was she was delivering newspapers at 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's basically done by 8 o'clock. And I was like, you got your whole damn day ahead of you. She goes, you don't know what it's like to be on the road when no one is on the road. Literally, it is so serene and calm, and I get to just deliver newspapers and I'm done. And then I have my whole day planned ahead of me. I was like, there are two types of people in this world. I always use this example: the people that go to bed and live, basically walk around today, you know, talking to everyone, doing what the normal average day person does. Then there's the people, the nocturnal people at night. You know, the ones I see at the gym at 2 o'clock in the morning, where they're either too smart to associate with normal day people, or they just can't be around the everyday kind of life-sucking vampires people kind of act like today.
I think in my lifetime, I think I started out right out of high school. You know, I could still sleep until 3 and get up and 3 p.m. and get up and I was more in bands and things like that. So my day would consist going into the night. And then the older I've gotten, the more I was just talking about this the other day. Like most people want like a Monday through Friday 9 to 5. And I was like, man, I would love a Monday through Friday like 7 to 3 and get it out of the way, in the morning and just go on with your day.
Yeah, I know. I would prefer that so much. A lot of people, like, I find it harder for me. Like, I'm up at odd hours. So, you know, being up at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's like, damn, I got to wait 8 hours or something until work comes. Like, that sucks. And it's like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, I wish I had a job that was just ready for me right then. And then I could just take a nap to the day. Like, I like taking naps midday. You know what I mean? It feels like, you know, I'll get randomly hit with like a fatigue, and I'll be like, look, I'm going to take a nap for an hour, and then I'm recharged and ready to go. But, oh, man, I'm telling you, there's a benefit to waking up before everybody and just going out and, first of all, delivering things. Now, how hard is it for you not to have that curiosity side where you want to look into the mail a little bit?
I don't think I've ever really had that kind of curiosity to, wonder what's in the packages or wonder what's in the mail or, it's, I think a lot of times people just assume that you just want to open the mail up and see what's going on or what's in these packages. But at this point, it's just another box to me. Unfortunately, it's not like it's a see what's inside, or it could be a $3,000 watch, or it could be a $10 DVD for all I care.
Yeah, it's crazy because there's stuff like that come out about mail carriers that are delivering mail, and the mail doesn't get to the person. And it was like around Christmas time this happens, usually because there's money in cards and people tend to open it up. And I said, that's a very reliable job you guys have. First of all, in the concept of how honest you have to be. I mean, you can't open up somebody's mail only on the concept of it's illegal. It's their right. It's their information, not supposed to be meant for others.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's literally like, imagine being a kid on Christmas Day. You're seeing all these wonderful big ass boxes, but none of them have your name on it. And you're just sitting there before everyone's awake. Like, I could just rip through all these things right now. You know what I mean? It's the curiosity side of you.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times, obviously, you're going to get some bad apples in every business, and especially around Christmas time, you start seeing all those videos of carriers just throwing packages from the street to the porch and things like that. But I think the most of the people that I work with and work around, that's like the last thing on anybody's mind. And like us keeping packages back or us keeping mail back, it's like the last thing on anyone's mind, because you don't want to have to deliver that a second time. You just want to get it in and get it out and get it over with. There's no we're holding your mail just because we want to, or not finishing routes because you don't want to. It's like, no, that's the last thing you want, is to keep mail around.
Have you seen the trend of the people? It happened like last year. It was people that were like stealing boxes off porches after they were getting delivered, and people were
Oh
putting
yeah.
like cameras set up and confetti and like bombs in the packages. So when they opened it up, it was like a stink bomb got exploded on them. What's your idea of someone going through somebody's mail just to see what's inside of it on the basis of curiosity?
On the basis of curiosity, I think that's a ridiculous thing to do. I mean, I understand it if, if you're going to steal, and then obviously, a package sitting on a porch is probably a pretty tempting item. So I mean, it's not necessarily curiosity, more of that you're just a piece of crap.
Yeah, you're a
You-
savage that digs through somebody's trash to get all their credentials and all these weird things. I actually had happen to me. I think the first year I got a debit card, I was always cash 100%. I really hated a debit card, but I realized I'd rather use a debit card at a gas station instead of going inside at like 2 o'clock in the morning to give a $20 bill to a person to fill up my car. And when I got it, dude, not even 6 months after I got it, I immediately got my account hacked and some dude bought a shit ton of TVs. The bank,
Nice.
thank God, was on it immediately. They called me. They were like, we have some weird things popping up in your purchase history. See, your basis is usually around $1, $2 purchases. I'm pretty good at saving my money. And they're like, did you happen to buy 5 plasma screen TVs for about $1,000 a pop? And I was like, no, the hell I didn't. And if I did, I don't have it in my house. And they were like, yeah, there's definitely some credit. We'll find this. And they nailed the problem pretty fast. But it comes to the main question of, when it's somebody's information, I don't understand how someone can go so far into being so curious to where they would want to dig through it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing with banks, though. It's even that. I mean, obviously, if it's thousands of dollars, then they might actually look into it. But if you get your card swiped at a gas station or whatnot, and they get your information and spend $100, you're going to get that money back. The bank's going to probably just write it off, and that's just not enough for them to go after to find the person that did it, kind of stuff. So it's almost like a victimless crime
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
it's a bunch of people that are hurt. It's a bunch of people that
Yeah.
are looking for a way to kind of progress, like get a bunch of money. Especially this was around the time like people were a lot of that were coming out were on the fact of what are they baristas, these types of people
Mhm.
that grab your card, they scan the information and write down your information numbers and stuff, and they use that. It's very hard to find loyal people in a world where we're kind of all hurt. And this is when I kind of turn to, because you do something fascinating. You actually do a podcast called Talk Toomey, and it focuses on music. One of the things in art, it's a form of art. Okay, my parents are both DJs. My parents both own radio stations. All right. So I have been diverse into everything music culture, from my dad's favorite band. Basically, when I was a kid, you were getting, when a Kiss toothbrush came out, you were getting Kiss toothbrush. That was the first thing my dad was like, you're getting this. I'm like, but I don't really know a whole lot. He's like, no, 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 no. It's your legacy, son. It's your legacy. I'm like, okay. And coming from a music background and coming kind of with just a passion for understanding all concepts of music, what do you try and think of when you hear the new stuff that gets played today? I feel like it's lost its creativity and inspirational aspect.
Ooh, that's a deep one. I mean, the new music today. I just turned 40, so it's hard for me to even have an opinion on new music today, because I know I just sound like an old man when it comes to talking about the new releases of modern hip hop and things like that. I mean, I have kids that are um, in their teens, and when I hear some of the stuff that they're playing, I'm just like, this isn't hip hop. This is, I'll put in like Snoop Dogg and be like, this is real hip hop. So I just end up being the old curmudgeon when it comes to that stuff. So, but I mean, pop music has never been about true music fans getting into it. In the 90s, when everybody was listening to like Enya or something, it's not like the metalheads were also listening to the Enyas and all of that nonsense. So it's never been for me. It's never been for us. It's always been for the mainstream, and just
The newer
the
generation.
cattle call of what's pleasing to everyone's ears. It's never going to challenge anybody. So I don't think that I don't think anything's different. I think it's just always been like this, and it'll always be like this. It's always been manufactured. All these stuff that you go back to that people loved in the 80s. The 80s, all of the 80s pop was 100% manufactured pop. I mean, that's what it's always been. So it's not anything new. It's just, just got a little bit more auto tune these days.
I think when it became out of tune was the fact that companies started running everything now. It seems like everything has a monetized beat to it, and now somebody can just get famous off being like, yeah, and then they just they just say one word responses half the time. It loses the art of creativity that was the passion drive for music. I mean, from seeing live performances to seeing my dad did a Kiss tribute band for a long, long time. So I know my dad as the Cat, Peter Criss. Okay, one of the most I don't know where exactly you're located at, but have you ever heard there's a thing known as the Rams Head Live? It's in Baltimore. Um, my dad
I don't think so.
played in front of like 1,000 something people, and seeing this as a kid, literally music's in my blood. I don't play an instrument like anymore, basically because I found it very hard and tasking for me. My family, like everybody now, even nowadays, is in one or two bands. They all play on stage still, but it comes from a concept of this was diverse into my world when I was a kid, especially kind of like those are moments when you're a kid, before the iPod, before Spotify, you literally had so much information at your fingertips. There was a time I was walking to the bus stop and I had a CD and I had to be stuck with that CD, whatever I chose, whether it was Linkin Park, whether it was Panic at the Disco, whether it was Black Eyed Peas, whether it was Kiss, whether it was Metallica, whether it was whatever. My dad inspired into me to make sure I was into all realms of music and understood that they can spark different emotions.
Yeah, I think that a lot of us are like that, and it's funny you keep bringing up Kiss because Kiss was the band that when I was like 9, I had some older cousins that were like, hey, check out this band. I mean, it was like 88-ish. And they played me this band Kiss, and I was like, oh my God. And then they showed me pictures of Kiss, and I was like, well, this is amazing. And then, then I'd go on to heavier stuff like Metallica and Slayer, and then continue on and want to play music and things like that. So um I think it's born into a lot of people that are musical. I mean, my parents were always listening to music around the house, and if Bob Seger came on the radio, they're like, "Who is this?" And I would always be like, "I guess it's Bob Seger," because that's our ongoing thing. But uh, it's I think music is just for people that you know feel a little bit more and have a little bit more emotion in them, and actually, that means a lot more to them. I've got one kid that loves music and one kid that loves video games. It's not, and as much as I've wanted to kind of force music onto them, and it's hard to do. So I just think when you get into music and get into a little bit more past, what's just on the radio, when you become that obsessed Kiss fan or that obsessed Metallica fan or Pantera fan or even Panic at the Disco and the new Earth stuff. I think that's just kind of more born into you more than most. Some people just want to turn on the radio and have it as background noise, but some people that background noise is their noise of their entire life. So
Well, it's crazy that music can spark such emotions and really resonate with someone. I feel like when I say music became lazy nowadays is the fact that it only became so studiotized, but they make it very, very unrelatable. You know, it's I think the best part about music was it was able to relate to your experiences, at least for me, like, being like my age now, listening to a band called Atmosphere. I don't know if you know a whole lot about them, but everything he talks about in his raps, it's not about 600 bends. It's not about 600 whatever. It's not about having all these types of things that maybe they don't even have. But it was literally about like, man, I can't eat till I find my money. My money's in my wallet, but my wallet ain't in my pocket. Can't remember the last time I saw it. It was about the world literally looking down on him. He had a song called God Loves Ugly. and it was about being mistreated as a kid and these types of things. Like anybody that's going through bullying or anything that's experiencing some type of emotion, like you can resonate with those songs. You can also resonate with songs like the Beatles. Like if you've ever experienced drugs and listened to a Beatles song, you know exactly what the hell they're talking about. You know, one of my all-time favorite movies that I thought did music in a really good light, it showed kind of the darkness it takes and the twists and turns of all this amounting pressure when it comes to an audience. Dewey Cox. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but you saw the change in him. You saw where his music became a little bit lazy because he was diving into so many different things. Like at one point, he was like, "There should be an army of didgeridoos," and the guy's like, "What? Like this isn't even music anymore." And you know, being in a band for a short time, like it was my brother's band, but we played on the radio a couple of times. That feeling you get when you play something and a bunch of people are like cheering, that's why people want to live a rock star lifestyle. They want to be wanted. I remember seeing Back to the Future and writing down every single word when he sung the song Johnny Be Good. Just listening to that, my dad's like, "Why are you listening to that?" I'm like, "This is awesome." Like I would listen to songs like Frank Sinatra from games that would play old school type songs like Fallout Shelter, Fallout. It's like this kind of a post-apocalyptic games where you could literally listen into the game just to music like Frank Sinatra, the Ink Spots, all these types of things. And that's actually why when I go to thrift stores nowadays, I pick up vinyl records. I mean, I have a bunch of vinyl records on the side of my wall, not only because the music, but because of the concept, like the art they used on their covers, the originality in it all. Like if you ever ask anybody about if they have a vinyl record collection, nowadays kids my age are like, "What's a vinyl record?" But when you ask someone of an older generation, like my parents' age, they will show you their collection of vinyl records from Pink Floyd to whatever. And I get the biggest emotional like stimulation from just sticking my hand near a nice subwoofer or speaker and feeling the beat or just the song play through this amp. That feeling you get, I mean, I can't example it to anything else.
You know, it's you talking about that. I went to high school with a girl that was deaf, and we were friends, and we were all in a car together. And a song came on the radio, and she said that she really liked this song, and we all looked at her like, "What do you mean?" And she was talking about that she could feel the bass and the beat through you know her body. And I've always you know 20 years later I still think about that, about how that was one of her favorite songs even though she was deaf. That was always a cool notion to have.
Now, do you just stick on like hardcore, like rock music and like metal and stuff in your podcast?
In the podcast, yeah, I'd stick more in the heavy metal hardcore world. I mean, obviously, my personal tastes are a little bit, you know, wide ranging. I mean, I grew up in Nashville, so obviously, I love some Johnny Cash and some old Wayland and Willie and all that. Um, you know, I've tried to have John Carter Cash, Johnny's son, on the podcast a couple of times because he was involved in the Devil Driver country metal crossover album they did. You know, just trying to get some of those stories in there too. But the podcast, yeah, it stays kind of in its lane of hardcore and heavy metal.
What types of things have you learned in your podcast? Have you had anybody special guests on that really kind of changed your perspective on music in general?
You know, the one thing that always comes out, and a lot of times I'll talk to bands that have kind of, you know, made it, some, you know, been signed, gone on to tour and all that stuff, is how similar the stories tend to be, and how you know, I was in an unsigned band in the '90s, and then I was in a signed band in the 2000s that I joined on to. But it's the unsigned band. It's funny how far away we were from actually being signed, but yet how close we were, I think, to being signed. Hearing everyone's stories about getting signed, you know, the proverbial, you know, uh, trophy at the end of the day or whatever, you know, the um, what everybody's going for is to get signed, especially back then. Maybe not now as much.
They
Now
want
you
to
can
be
just,
heard.
yeah, you want to be heard, you know, get out there and get that validation of signing the lucrative record contract and being a signed artist. But yeah, it's funny how everyone's story just kind of has that through line of And then we met this one guy who knew this other guy. And the next thing you know, we were being signed to Roadrunner Records and we were on tour with Korn. You know, it's very, it's a lot of who you know, not what you know, and all that.
Have you heard Travis Barker explain his kind of its inspiration and his drive to pursue the drumming field for Blink 182?
I have not heard that.
There's a podcast with Joe Rogan. He talks about it. Like, I don't know if you knew that he was in a plane accident and
Yeah.
75% of his body was basically burned. And he talks about like his drive for music and him coming back from all these types of things. Like he talked about his experience in the hospital, thinking that his band members were still alive just in another room. And he didn't find out until weeks later. Like you hear the emotional roller coaster this guy's been through. And now, like when he gigs and he tours, he does not fly in a plane. You know, he takes a tour bus. If they're in another country, he has to go like 2 weeks before everybody else to get there. You know, he has to go, like he has to plan it out and make sure that he goes there with his whole family, kind of turns it into a trip. And it's crazy because he was talking about his inspiration for music. Back in the day, I mean, even nowadays, statistics for being a popular artist is very, very low. You know, it's crazy how we always chalk up to, oh, you want to be a famous musician, go to California, go to, you know, this area, go to Hollywood, go to these types of things. And really you're seeing it happen in small towns nowadays is where some of the stars are popping up nowadays. Like for him experiencing, like him talking about drumming constantly, not having a job, just doing this thing. And his dad, like, look, you're going to get a job or you're getting the fuck out of my house. And his dad was like, he was saying that to him and he's just sitting there like, okay, then. And he ended up leaving and sleeping on multiple people's couches. And he talks about that experience and that drive to become something. I think what kills a lot of artists' dreams is they choose to set it aside and then come back to it later. And sadly, they forget about it and they don't have that drive anymore.
Yeah, it's always the falling into the backup plan, and then the backup plan kind of becomes your main plan. You get the job that all of a sudden you can't get off on the weekends, or you can't get off for the next tour coming up, and then you're like, all right, well, I'll sit out this next tour, but I'll be on the next one, and then the next one becomes the next one, and next thing you know, you've got a 401k and 3 kids at home. So yeah, it's the real life can kind of take over sometimes, and I think a lot of the people that succeed in music are not necessarily the most talented. It's never been the most talented dudes that make it. It's the ones that have the drive and stay with it
And
and
truly
never give
care
up the
about
dream. Yeah.
truly care about the art of music. Like you hear someone, like if you get a band together, the first thing you want to make sure everyone realizes is, what is everyone's goal here? Is it fame? Is it money? Is it women? Is it drugs? What is it? That's the first thing you want to highlight, because this is what's going to level you as a band. First of all, if it's a bunch of friends and you're all going for different things, when it starts getting popular, the main thing for band breakups is the concept of everyone has a different plan in mind. When you see bands form and truly last, like older style bands, Aerosmith, the types of things, they do go through their faults, but they have such inspirational stories and drive and literally a passion for creating music. Red Hot Chili Peppers, for example, one of my favorite bands, you can tell there's tension in the group, mostly because it seems like there's a problem. Like when they had John Frusciante in there was a problem with him and Anthony Kiedis, where they weren't vibing off each other, and you could tell it. There's a video, a live video I bought called Live at the Slane Castle. You can tell Chad Smith and you can tell that Flea had a connection, mostly because their instruments hit so similar, the bass working off the drums. But you get to see it, like they're looking and they're playing off each other and they're smiling at each other, but the whole time Anthony Kiedis is kind of like not really paying attention to John Frusciante. You can tell there's a little bit of tension in the group, and then a couple of years later they break up with John Frusciante and they get somebody else, Josh Klinghoffer. And you get to see it in the documentary Stadium Arcadium. They, instead of doing it as a band or doing separate interviews, they did it 2 by 2. They didn't do it correctly. And I'm like, what is going on? It turns out I found out about that tension. Then I read their books and these types of biographies they write about, and you hear the experiences that they have. Pretty sure every rock band has a crazy ass story. And listening to them, like maybe not rock, but psychedelic funk, but hearing how John Frusciante, created that most popular song, Snow by Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when created that guitar riff, he actually took that from he took that from Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix played it in a chord way, and the way he explained it was, I just took his chords and I split them up into single notes, and then he played it, and you're like, holy crap. It was that similar, that awesome beat. We're wondering how you created that. And I'm like, sometimes, like, if you look at songs that are covers, a lot of people are like, oh, but it's not the original. Sometimes a cover is sometimes better than the original.
Yeah, because you can always take their original thought and put your spin on it. And a lot of bands get a lot of grief for covering artists and that being their main song, like the recent band Bad Wolves with their zombie cover. But what it does is it gives you something that you're familiar with, adds their flavor to it, and you're like, all right, cool. It's just a nice little gateway, a little Trojan horse into your brain, so you can hear a song and hear a band that you're like, all right, well, I'd like to check this band out. I already know this other song. I'm going to check out their band, and if you like both meshing together, then you'll actually go and sit down with the catalog. I think a good cover is a good, nice gateway into your brain.
Especially when you're like a starting band, you want to have cover songs. If you're just playing originals, nobody wants to sit there and listen to that. Like I'm in a local, like, popular tourist attraction spot in my town. There's bars on every street. Seems like everyone down here is a musician, mostly on the concept of people want to get famous and they want to be heard. But when they go to a gig and we play a gig or something, it's the concept of you're playing covers first. You want people to dance to your music. People are going out to listen to something that they know, not something that they've never heard of. And that's when you throw an original in there after a couple of covers. You're trying to show people how much you truly care for music. You're trying to show people the inspiration. That's why I say, when a band, even if they don't have a lot of talent, what truly shows in their band and makes them a good band is when they all vibe together and they all truly just care about the music and they try their hardest in it. You put your emotion and soul into a song when you write it and you create it. If you half-ass it, it becomes, I think, less impactful.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%.
I think, like, I find it awesome when I read a story or an article when it comes to the concept of, like, Metallica visiting an 83-year-old woman in the hospital, the oldest Metallica fan apparently, and they came and visited her on her deathbed, like, and gave her hugs, signed merch, and did all these things. Whether it was a publicity stunt or not, it didn't matter. It actually showed, like, even though a band reaches fame, they didn't let it get to their head.
Yeah, they've always been kind of one of those bands where even if they had sold a bazillion records, you always still kind of feel like they're a down home. Could still be your friends kind of band, even though you watch Lars in the Some Kind of Monster video movie selling $15 million paintings. You're like still like, I could hang out with him and have a beer. But they still do those secret shows where they'll play a small club for a couple hundred people, and they don't feel like they're that untouchable.
Yeah, I think when you start to get fame going straight to your head, like afterwards, you won't take pictures with anybody. You won't do that. It completely, even if you love their music, it makes you like, it's why they tell you not to idolize your heroes or things of this sort, because you might find out something you don't like about them, or you might have an experience with them you don't like. But, like, I've been to concerts, multiple concerts, and I've seen the people that truly care about talking off stage. I went to I don't know if you know the band Slightly Stoopid.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I went to one of their concerts on my birthday, New Year's Eve. The singer jumped down off stage after playing 4 hours longer than he was supposed to. And he jumped down on stage and saw me, ran up to me, goes, "How old are you, man?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm 16 years old, man. This is awesome. I love this. It's my birthday today." He goes, "It's your fucking birthday?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Smoke this," and hands me a bowl. I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, wait a minute, I have not done this before. I'm a little bit nervous, but also at the same time, I was like, this is fucking Slightly Stupid. I'm going to do this. So afterwards, it was crazy because they invited us back to their tour bus, and I met bands, and they've remembered me. They've done all these types of things just because my parents working in radio. I got to see their live versions and stuff, and get to spend a little bit of time with them. But they invited me back into the band to play Mortal Kombat. I'm like, this is fucking too weird. Like, you guys are slightly stupid. Like, Sublime hired you guys right out of high school and signed you onto their record label. And it's funny because I started finding out a lot about their personal lives, and they're two high school wrestling coaches.
Hmm.
Imagine you're wrestling for your school and your coach is the singer for Slightly Stoopid. Like,
There was a story the other day with the band called Pressure 4 or 5. They had a couple of minor hits in the late '90s, early 2000s, but the singer of that band is now a principal at a high school.
oh my God, I think it's so weird where people take like this complete left turn, like, whoa, 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 you did a complete 180, man. It's like, yeah, well, now, back in the day when I was experiencing metal and trying to summon the devil, now I am a minister. It's like, where did you go? What happened along the road? I always find it funny because one of my like favorite bands people give a lot of shit for because they see him as a parody band, mostly because the singer is an actor, Jack Black. Okay.
Okay.
Tenacious D. I don't know if you've ever really paid attention to that
Oh
band
yeah,
at
love
all.
them.
That movie was amazing. Their songs are amazing. They have a song called The Metal. Have you ever heard of that one?
I mean, I'm sure I've heard it. I'm terrible with the song names.
It literally is explaining metal in a type of philosophy way where it talks about metal being the god of like this giant primordial beast made of metal back in the day of like swords and axes and all these types of things. And he actually inspired a video game from it called Brutal Legend. And it was all in the concept of like this old school form, like you can't kill the metal will live on. And a bunch of people are like, that's not metal. I'm like, the guitar riff to it, Kyle Cage playing that song is fucking amazing. I mean, it's something that makes you really rethink because everyone considers Jack Black, oh, he's just an actor. Oh, he's just whatever. I'm like, it doesn't matter if you have this type of persona in a different way. You can still make music really fucking good.
Yeah, no, it's something that it's hard to bridge the gap between public persona and trying to do something like that. Even like 30 Seconds to Mars like had a really good album, but it's Jared Leto's band. Or there's the Chris Jericho's got a band called Fozzy that's out there that actually has had a pretty decent hit not too long ago. So but I think it's easier now for that stuff to kind of cross over and get a little bit more acceptance in the music world, rather than like when Keanu Reeves tried to do that band in the '90s called Dog Star. Everybody was just like rolling their eyes at it. But now I think you can do both.
It's about kind of creating audience and creating a bridge between two different audiences. I mean, I don't know if you know the band Dirty Heads. There used to be a punk rock kind of band, kind of like this I don't give a shit attitude. Then they went into more of a reggae style, and then they dived where everyone said they went wrong, which I do think they went wrong a little bit in the concept of it, but I understood the idea. They dived into a techno, all studiotized beats type of rap thing where people are like, this isn't the Dirty Heads I know. Loyal fans were saying that. But I understood it because they were trying to adapt to a new audience. And now with their music that's coming out now, they did one with Avenged Sevenfold. Uh, they bridged the gap where there was the newer generation and the older generation that liked that style of reggae. They bridged it, and now in their songs nowadays, it's a mixture of the two, and they do it so beautifully. And that's when I say, like, music is for everyone, no matter your age. I'm 21 years old, but I love a Johnny Cash song. I love Frank Sinatra. I love hearing that style of music. I love, hearing like what is it? God, what is that band? Oh my God, I'm gonna forget them. The Temptations. Oh my God, listening to the Temptations, like it's art. It's inspiration. It's music. It's a bunch of people coming together in a way that it all fits, and it seems like it was like destined to happen. So many bands fall apart because they don't get a certain amount of fame. They don't get a certain amount of attraction. And I'm like, you have to have your ideas settled out for what you want. I mean, music has been throughout our history. People have played music it all kind of stems from the same concept of dealing with your emotions. But, from a guy playing a song to a girl he loves in something like Romeo and Juliet times, or back even before that, where people were tapping on rocks and creating these different types of beats just to create this connection. I mean, music has taken many different forms. It keeps advancing and turning into something new. And I think when you lose that beautiful aspect of it is when you choose to give it no effort, when you choose to give it no passion. I find it awesome when I hear stories of old school rock bands that they go, we're going to sit back in the garage like we did when we first started, and we're going to play music, and we're going to stay in there until we get a song written down. Doing that, having those old school moments, sometimes breaking out of the studio, especially as a popular band where you have billions of dollars, I hear that, and that's what gives me like, wow, that's going to be a good song when it comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've lost a lot of that in the new technology of being able to just file share and you know, I recorded a track a few years ago for the first time where it was actually a couple of other podcasters. We did a podcast band, and the drummer was in Pennsylvania, the guitar player was in Michigan, I was here in Louisville, and then the guy that sang on it was in Arizona, and we just, you know, sent the track around, and it was and then it was completed, and you know, it was fun to do, but it was definitely did not take me back to those days of just being in the garage and, you know, jamming something out until it sounded good.
Especially when you open up the garage door and you let everyone in the neighborhood hear your either awesome music or awful music, but as a way of like not truly giving a shit. And then you'd see people randomly pull up lawn chairs and just sit and watch in amazement. And that's like, that's the stuff you need, even if you suck. Like there were times like when we're practicing a song for the first time, we used to do covers of like Land Down Under and a more reggae style vibe and a more like fast paced vibe compared to the original. And it was, people loved it, but at the start, I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. Honestly, it sounded like crap to me. You know, I think when, like, for me playing music, it's just, I feel like it's someone telling me what notes to hit. It's not me truly knowing which ones to do and truly feel it. I always had a fascination, like, with poetry in a way, writing down words. I could do it in that mannerism. And I found that I can turn that into a little bit of a rap or a song style, turn them into lyrics. And sometimes you have those moments. Have you ever created your own songs?
Yeah, lots of them.
Yeah. So when you create your own songs, have you ever had that moment where you're driving and you need to pull over to write it down or you're going to forget it?
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're talking about. You're always, you know, you're laying in bed and you get the riff in your head and you got to jump up because you forget it if you don't, or even if you're jamming on the guitar, you make sure to record it. Yeah, there's definitely moments of inspiration. And what's worse is when you're trying to write a song and you're just like trying to force it out of you and it doesn't happen. And that's the one thing, if you listen to enough podcasts or listen to enough musician interviews, typically the song that made their career, they wrote in 20 minutes. You know, it just spews out of them one day. I forget what artist it was, but he was talking about his two biggest hits he ever had in his life. He wrote on the same day within like an hour of each other. And he's like trying to recreate that day. Like, I'll get up, I'll drink a cup of coffee, I'll do exactly what I did every piece of that day. And he's never been able to recreate it since.
Sometimes they have like a one hit wonder too. Like, you know, the guy, I forgot his name, the one that made the song Do the Twist.
Chubby Checker?
Yeah. He had one hit and that's
Yeah.
it. But that one hit, it's like, damn, that made you idolize him as an artist. But that's his only good song. You know, sometimes there's just that one hit wonder, and that's what they ride the fame on. They
I think
can't.
if you look at Chubby Checker's discography, I think it's all like he has 30 different like doing the twist, the you know, the Christmas twist, or the blah blah blah. It's always like the
That's all you
reverse
know him
twist.
for. Like, yeah, he has to keep going with it. Like, there's this version of the twist. You could do
Yeah.
it this way or that way. It's like, it's one of those songs where, like, sometimes an artist only has one really, really good song that they're remembered for, but that's their ride to fame. You see that nowadays with a popular trending song. Like, who was that one girl that did that song all about the bass? Michelle Trainer.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any other popular songs that were as popular as that. They were a one hit wonder. They talk about it. Artists talk about sometimes you're in the spotlight and then it's gone. It's a brief moment with how people's kind of minds change. But then you listen to a song like the movie, what was it, Queen, that came out. You know, a bunch of
Yeah.
people wanted to see that and hear that whole story, whether they Hollywooded it up like most of the times they do. But, you know, listening to Bohemian Rhapsody, these types of things, and then trying to picture it into like what my parents were experiencing when going and seeing that live. I mean, most of my parents always chalk up like me at being their age, and like they try and relate to me like, I know what you do. I know what I did when at my age. I know what you're doing. I'm like, I'm honestly not as crazy as you were. I wasn't dyeing my hair with bleach. I wasn't doing these types of things that made my hair fall out or do these types of crazy stunts. You know, they talk about these experiences, but that's what it was. I love watching the movie Wayne's World. And the dude in front of them, they're at a rock concert, and Garth lights the lighter to wave in the air, and he lights the dude's hair on fire. And the dude just turns around and looks at him and like nods his head to confirm, and then keeps on rocking out like he's completely oblivious his head's on fire. And I was like, that's the shit. Like, that's the stuff where you get to see the change nowadays. People went from holding the lighter up to having a phone screen with a lighter app on it.
Yeah, it's definitely a whole different world. I remember we went and saw Tool a couple of months ago, and they had a no cell phone policy that they were highly enforcing. But it was crazy to watch the crowd actually just be into the music and not have to like, oh, I got to get this clip for Facebook that nobody's going to care about, and
And you're
I got
not
to get
even
all
going to
these
look at it later. You're just going to have it
right.
sit on your phone the whole time. You're never going to have a day where you actually watch it.
Yeah, it's if you watch like old tour videos of old bands, you're like, man, the whole crowd is just getting into it and beating the crap out of each other and jumping around and having the time of their life. Like, wonder what's different now when you look at recent tour photos of or videos of bands, and it's just everyone's got their phone out, everybody's got to get their clips or whatnot. And I'm not going to say that I don't take some photos or do a clip here and there, but I also have a music show that I feel like going to throw it out there and just I'm creating some content for myself. But most people, yeah, I don't need to see your Facebook videos.
Yeah, a lot of comedians, they actually make sure there's no cell phone policy. They make you
Yeah,
kind of keep it locked up. And there was a Dave Chappelle's special that came out. I don't know if you saw that,
I did.
but the dude started making fun of him because he got his phone in there even though there were no phones, and he was
Yeah.
like, "Go ahead, answer your call. Go ahead." And a dude steps outside and he just starts making fun of him. He goes, "Imagine if he said, imagine he just got a call, his mama's dead. Oh no, mama's dead." And it's like, it's that though. It seems like we're too hooked on this phone. We're too like me as a person. I don't when I go to the grocery store, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm keeping my phone in the car. I'm not having that little bastard in my pocket on the concept of that 20-minute, 30-minute grocery trip of getting all my groceries for the week turns into an hour or 2 hour long process when I can't stop staring at my phone and stop shopping. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I see too many people nowadays. It really gets me. Like I'll be walking and some person will be looking down at their phone and bump into me and then expect me to apologize. And I'm like, you're the one that bumped into me. And then they get really aggressive about it. They're like, what? What'd you just say? And I'm like, are you about to fight me over something you made a mistake on? Like, what's happening, dude?
Well, you are in Baltimore, so.
Well, yeah, close by Baltimore, but that is true. It's crazy because I hear these types of things and I see them myself. I experience these types of people. We're all hurt, man. We're looking for our way to get our voice out there, whether it's through music or whether it's through just an Instagram post, a Facebook post. We're all looking for that like and acceptance, that connectivity. You used to experience those as being of like an older generation than me, coming from having a concert and going with your friends and having these moments. Nowadays, the only way friends can connect together anymore, like kids my age, they're going to the bar nowadays. That's the only way they can hang out, because when they get home, they might have a full plan to hang out and do these types of things, but then they get too comfortable and sit and watch Netflix instead of hanging out with their actual friends anymore. They miss these awesome ass moments.
Yeah, I think that as people say that everybody's always just glued to their phone and there's lack of social interaction. In a lot of ways, I'm more connected to a lot more people than I ever have been in my life. And
The fact that
you'll watch
we can do this podcast together too. That's an
yeah.
amazing thing for technology.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's always you show those, they'll do a side by side photo of a bunch of people on the subway looking at their phone, and they're like, "Oh my god, look at all these people!" But then they'll show a picture from 70 years ago of everyone on the bus or on the subway reading the newspaper.
I think it's crazy
I'm like, you're
because
pretty much doing the same thing, reading the news on their phone.
exactly. And that's where we say like newspaper, like I've talked to people that are journalists and do the old school articles and newspapers and things of that sort. And they're like, it's a dying thing. It's all turned into, and when you talk about journalism, now the easiest way for someone to be a journalist is to be a blogger and put up some
Yeah.
website article that does not have to be correct at all. There's no ramifications on it. I was like, back when you published something false in an article, you were fired and you were discredited. You could not get another job. You know what I mean? People highly looked through your articles. So you had to make sure you were getting all the evidence from every single account, every person that was involved in it. Nowadays, I can tell you an article like, hey, did you know if you burp twice back to back, that means you have cancer? And I'll just post it on WebMD. And next thing you know, some dude's going to read that. It doesn't matter if the information's right, but they're going to run with that notion.
I mean, you talk about your parents being DJs, and so obviously within the last 10 years and the last 5 years of podcasting, internet radio, the internet period has just opened the door to, if you want to be a DJ, or if you want to put your voice out there, buy a microphone and download Audacity, and next thing you know, you're your own DJ. So you get to basically, you don't have to go through the rigors of going to broadcast school, getting an internship at the radio station, doing overnights for 6 months to 2 years to before you get on to the afternoon show. You basically, if you're good enough, you're going to put your voice out there, you're going to get some followers, and the next thing you could do whatever you want. It's the same that we were talking about music earlier. It's like, you don't have to go through the vetting process of the record labels anymore. If you and I write a good song and put it out there, we're going to be the next Lil Nas X. That's
Let me take them horses down the old back road.
Well, it's a 2-minute song that has no structure, catchy as hell. And, my 4-year-old sings it, my 14-year-old sings it. So
honestly, if anybody sings it around me now, I get very aggressive on the concept of I'm tired of hearing it. I don't know when we're ever using horses if we're not a cowboy. The way he did it too, I thought it was a way like Billy Ray Cyrus was involved and people were getting him a lot of crap for it. And I'm like, he also wasn't doing a lot of music at the time. It's just him to pop back in the like kind of the spotlight in a way, and the way they did add it together, I did like him being in there. I thought it was pretty cool, mostly because I know some of his older songs and I know like him from I hate to say it, Hannah Montana, but that whole concept of though, like I can see where an artist does lose the limelight, and you do look for that, because sadly we never want to be kind of like, you see Pam Anderson, she's modeled her whole basis, her whole fame off her looks, and then as she got older, things started to fade. She started going to plastic surgery and all these things to kind of maintain the one thing that was fleeting. This is a problem with models. This is a problem with music, especially with where it does not, it might stand in the test of time, but it pops out of the popular eye. It pops out of what's trending. I think a lot of what's crazy, I've talked to people that do music podcasts, and they say that it really sucks the fact that now you're not getting judged based on how many CDs you sell anymore, because CDs are kind of like a dying thing a little bit with Spotify and these types of music apps. That's awesome that we have these things to be able to kind of hit skip and do whatever. But see, the crappy thing was, or the best thing I think, to be honest with you, was if you had a crappy CD, if you had a song that you only liked one song on that CD, and you took it to the bus stop like me, you were stuck with the rest of that shit on there.
Yeah.
You had to sit there and pay your price. You had to, okay, I want to listen to Black Eyed Peas. Well, what song? I just want to listen to number 3. I don't want to listen to their other stuff. Well, what's number 3? Pump It? Okay. So you end up playing that the whole time until eventually you end up starting to discover more about just that, besides that other popular song. And that makes you learn more about the artist, learn more about their music. And actually you might find one that, people say fly under the radar, one that's not looked at heavily because it's not the one that's trending.
Yeah, there's a lot of those where you'll open up your Spotify, you'll listen to one song, you're like, all right, I'm done with that band. But a lot of times when you went to the store, you paid your $15 for the CD, you're like, all right, I'm going to get my $15 out of this. So you're going to listen to it multiple times just to be like, make sure you don't like it. You can listen to the album one time through on Spotify, not, and like, all right, I don't like it. And you don't ever have to go back to it. But if you've spent the $15 on the physical CD, you're going to listen to it one time. You're like, I don't know if I like that or not. Put it down. Go back to it. Listen to it a couple of times. And then then after the 4th or 5th listen, you're like, oh, shit, this is my favorite band ever.
Yeah, and you find out loving actually all their new songs. Like,
Yeah.
I remember when the Expendables, they released I forgot what song. They released an album called Starry Night, or it was called Sand in the Sky, but they had a song called Starry Night that they released. I heard it. I was like, what the fuck happened? This was an alternative, like kind of metal reggae band that came out like writing these songs and doing these amazing things that I love that I used to listen to religiously. And then they came out with this song that seemed like it was too I don't even know, like sold out a little bit. And I was like, wow. But I kept listening to it and I ended up loving every song on that CD. They have a song called Music Move Me. And it's about like sitting in my PJs, I'm starting out my day. watching the trees and the windy dances sway. And it's like, I got me a list of my favorite songs. I turned the volume up to 10 and like just blasting it in your house, not giving a shit about, the first thing I did when I got a car, when I got my license, I got an aux cord for my phone so I can blast my music and piss off all my neighbors. You know what I mean? But that was the thing. You wanted to play this music and you wanted to sing along with it and you didn't want to care anymore. Those things that like, that's what made me love that album. It was like discovering more and more and more about it and looking at them like, not only like they have this song, let me give it a chance, not just writing it off from the start. And I ended up loving the whole album and going to one of their concerts and being front stage singing with the singer where everyone else was like, what's this new stuff? And I'm like, I know all the lyrics, bro. He flicked 3 guitar picks at me. I only caught one. And afterwards he jumps down and he goes, he's signing merch and everything. And I'm like, hey man, like that was awesome. He goes, dude, you were really connected. And I'm like, thank you so much. It was awesome. And I met him years before and I knew he wasn't going to remember me. And he just goes, do I know you from somewhere? I'm like, you actually came to Ocean City at one point and you played for Secrets Radio. He goes, yeah, it was you, your brother, and your mom. Your mom was working on the radio, right? And I was like, dude, that was me. He goes, yo, what is up? And it was like a whole connection thing. And everyone's like, wait a minute, you know the artist? And I felt like this secret side. I was like, yeah, I'm popular. But it's like, it's crazy because we have a singer from Salisbury in a popular reggae band that opens for like 311 and all these. And I've actually had a popular reggae band singer on my podcast. His name's Howie Spangler. I messaged him. He sings in a band called Ballyhoo. And I messaged him. I was like, hey, man, it's probably not going to go to your actual thing. You're probably not going to read this. It's going to be some other person. But I do this podcast. I listen to your podcast and I find it inspiring. I'd like to talk to you if you ever get a chance. Not even a day later, I get a message from him. Yeah, man, let's do it. I'm like, all right, someone's messing with me. Okay. This isn't the real guy. And then I start talking to him. Whoa, like, it's you, man. He goes, yeah, man, what's up, dude? And it's like having those moments and having those things will isolate and I basically mold into stone your idea of what that means to be famous and not lose it. Like not lose the idea of still being human and being just like everyone else.
Yeah, it's nuts, man. Trying to, what's your main way to get guests on your show?
Me just doing what I did with you, just message you. That's literally it. I'm out there not only like I don't just like religiously listen to your podcast, religiously listen and just find out like people send me credentials, all these things. Like, here's my list of degrees and my diplomas. I'll give you 20 minutes. Okay, thank you. Sorry we couldn't make it work out. What do you mean? If you're just going to give me 20 minutes and hop off, that's not going to happen. We're going to have a conversation, Joe Rogan style, anything and everything. We're going to talk. You're going to learn stuff about me. I'm going to learn stuff about you. Everything that I have is all improv. I'm pulling out of my head. It's me just talking to you because everything I want to ask you is what I want to know. And I'm out here to hear everyone's story because I don't look at views. I don't look at all this stuff. Whether, I hate that YouTube shows you the analytics on your videos. And I hate when people message me saying like, hey, I can be on, but I'm only going to give you this amount of time. Let me know how many views you get. It'll decide if I really want to be on it or not. I'm like, if you don't want to be on it, that's fine, man. I'm out there to give people a voice. I'm out there to hear the stories of just average day folks and interesting people if you got a lot of time. It's about having a conversation. We're all sharing this world together and no one takes an hour to connect anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely nuts, man. Trying to get people on the show. I mean, obviously, I do a little bit more music based stuff, and do a lot more, promotion for bands and stuff. So, I mean, a lot of times, it kind of depends on the artist itself. If they get hey, they've got 20, 25 minutes, they can do your show. Then I'll just build a show around it, just to get that specific artist on. But yeah, I mean, I do like the long form interview. I like to be able to dive into someone's career, stuff like that. But for the most part, if the artist is cool enough or if I like the artist enough and they can only give me 20 minutes, then I'll take the 20 minutes.
Yeah, especially when you're doing that type of interview style. Like if you get someone that's like, hey man, I am pretty booked, but I can't, like someone famous like Steven Tyler. If you had a chance to get 10 minutes in a room with Steven Tyler, you're doing that 10 minutes. You know what I mean? But for me, I see the most inspiration not only from just someone that has a lot of credits, but also from someone that doesn't have any at all. Some kid that's just out of high school, doesn't know what he wants to do with his life, and just wants to sit there and shoot the shit with someone and have a conversation. for me, it's more of a passion project rather than a job. A lot of people, like when you're doing an interview, is a lot different from what mine is. Mine's more of a conversation style.
Yeah.
Like when you have an interview, like I could easily be doing this on radio right now. I could be doing talk radio, which is practically what podcasting is.
Yeah.
But when my dad said, "Hey, I own a radio station. Why don't I just give you an hour segment and be able to do this? You can have it and that could be your job." I'm like, "No, thank you." He's like, "Why?" He goes, "Because immediately you're going to change the whole aspect of it." And he goes, "Yeah, I'd give you a list of stuff to kind of work off of. It wouldn't be as improv." I'm like, "Yeah, that loses the aspect of it. I want 1 minute to be talking about whatever music, whatever, and then dive off into Bigfoot. I don't care. I want to have conversations. I want to find out what we're all interested in. We all hit around the same basis when it comes down to the podcast. We all talk about people wearing a mask in society today, afraid to show who they truly are and fear that it might affect someone or it might change their perspective of someone thinking about them. I'm like, you lose your drive that way. You get comfortable living a 9 to 5. My dad was not able to live a 9 to 5. He worked radio in the mornings, was home 2 hours, then he'd go back out and DJ at nights. Okay. But he did as much as he possibly could to make sure I learned about these things. Some of my favorite moments were things when he was like, just like I was going through the garage, saw these records and CDs, and I'm looking through and playing each different one, kind of playing a couple songs, finding the one with the prettiest artwork, to be honest with you, the ones that were like, whoa, this dude's shitting in a bucket. I want to listen to this. Throw it in the freaking thing. And next thing I know, like I came across Kiss, all this stuff. I was like, when I was a child, my dad had a Kiss tattoo on his arm. And it was from the greatest hits. And he used to own Kiss shoes. He owns everything Kiss. I think anything that comes out, owns it. But like he was telling me, like, I want you to listen to this and I want you to see if you like it. And I did love it. And I mainly probably loved it because my dad loved it, but I did find a fascination with the songs when I'm sitting there listening to Love Gun and my dad's like, this song's about the dude's dick. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm 10 years old, man. Like, I don't know this side of me. And I always found it really, really fascinating. My dad did a band before I was born called Flytrap with my uncle. And it was this like hardcore rock metal band. And you don't see your dad as having the same thoughts you do when you're like 16 or 17. Like you kind of think you're misunderstood in a way. You have that teen angst thing going.
Right.
And every time I would go to a restaurant with him, everybody knew my dad in town. Like, hey, Skip, what's up? What's up, Skip? He's like, hey, man, what's up? I'm just trying to sit here and eat with my son. What's up, man? And, he would relate to him still. He'd still like have a conversation with people. But they would always bring up this one question and it always made me wonder. He goes, hey, man, when's Flytrap getting together? And my dad was like, yeah, kind of faded off. Everybody kind of did their own thing. We're all, that band's kind of dead now. And I always asked him, what's Flytrap? What's this band Flytrap? Can I listen to a song? Hell no. Hell no. My dad said, no, not until you're older. I'm like, why not until you're older? You're not ready for it. I'm like, I'm not ready for what? And this is when, let's fast forward 8 years. I'm now 18 years old. I'm kind of writing down stuff in a journal, kind of like these creative songs, all about kind of like despair, but a little bit, not emo, but like more like, just kind of some punk stuff a little bit, kind of some rock kind of style lyrics, these types of ways of thinking, like Man in the Box, like that whole emotion you get from listening to that people can relate to when they're kind of going through something. He saw my journal and said, I think it's time. And I said, I think it's time for what? And he goes, I'm going to let you look at my journal and I want you to compare your notes compared to what I had. Okay. And I was reading it. I was like, I looked at him. I was like, you thought this way? And he goes, buddy, people are similar than you think. And I was like, someone I thought of like, he's my superhero. He's my dad. He doesn't have any sick thoughts. He doesn't have any twisted thoughts about girls. And I'm reading something about this girl that he had a crush on in high school. I was like, Dad, you didn't say this, did you? And he goes, oh God, no. Like, that type of thing. And he remember, like, he used to do this thing this senior year. People, like, his class schedule was he got to play drums at lunch, just randomly play drums the whole lunch, and people would sit there and listen to him because he learned everything when it came to the drums. That became his life. And he was only home 2 hours a day, and that 2 hours he slept. But he would tell me, like, practice drums in the garage. And I'm like, isn't it going to keep you up? He goes, no, I fucking love hearing that shit. It helps me fall asleep. And I'm like, yes. And then like he would be on the couch napping and I'd be playing drums in the family room or something. And he would just be like I would stop and be like, all right, I'm probably messing with his sleep. He would be like, hey man, where's the music at? where's the music? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you're hitting the drum. If you do it this way, and then he would just get up from his nap and show me. Like that inspiration I saw with that someone truly not only cared about their kid, but cared about music. It changed the whole realm of music for me because it diversed me in so much stuff I knew nothing about, you know? And then, you know, with Johnny Cash, I listened to Burning Ring of Fire, catchy song, okay?
Mhm.
Then I find a picture on the internet of Johnny Cash eating a birthday cake in the bushes, high on marijuana. And it says, you may be high, but you've never been Johnny Cash eating cake in a bush high. And I was like, this is awesome. And it gives me a better history of that. This is where we talk about the secret history that kind of comes out about an artist, whether it's good or bad. It makes you completely see them in a whole different light, good or bad.
Right. Oh yeah, 100%. It's always crazy when you peel back the layers of people, and that that's why I think we do this. I think that's why we podcast, man.
So I want to give you here a minute at the end to be able to kind of promote your podcast and where people can find your awesome content, man. Because you do a great thing getting interviews, dude. You probably have met some revolutionary people, at least in your life.
Yeah, it's the one thing that I've always said. It's kind of my CD collection come to life. Most of the time it's people, if you're into the hard rock and the heavy metal world, it's people you've heard of. Like, I just had Dave Ellefson of Megadeth on, members of Pantera on, and but then also I'll have the more obscure guy. Like we just had Scooter Word of Cold on, which actually that episode went pretty nuts, just because the underground fan base of some of these bands that you do will get it out there, and when they don't do interviews as much, people tend to latch onto those and get into them, man. But it's the podcast is Talk Toomey. My last name is Toomey, Toomey. You can find it on any podcatcher out there. It's on YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, the iTunes podcast. What is it called now? Apple Podcasts and Google Play. I mean, it's out there. If you listen to podcasts, you will be able to find it.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Josh. It
Thanks for
was
having
great
me, man.
talking to you, man.
Very cool. Thanks for reaching out.